I decided I'm really going to start reading from some of my journals that I kept when JT was in the hospital. Um, some of it's a little bit hard for me to read, but I feel like some of the information might be good or might be beneficial to other people. So I feel like I need to share some of this. There was a time when JT was in the hospital, and he'd been there a few times, but this particular time, he had a roommate that was very intrusive, and he was there's a lot of provocation. Every time I went to visit JT, he would follow me all the way to the room that I was going to. If I was going to a private area to talk to JT, he would follow me all the way to the room, and I'd have to like close the door in his face so he would leave us alone. This happened several times when I went to see him this particular week. And I was so concerned about it, I did end up calling the social worker about it because I felt like something was not going to be a good fit for JT, and I was worried something might happen. I just knew that he wasn't the same type of style as JT. He had some issues that he was there for some problems as well. But I was really concerned about JT, and he was upset the fact that this guy would not leave me alone. He just kept following me no matter where I went, and he was trying to like get in the middle of our meetings and stuff. So anyhow, I had called the social worker about it and tried to see if they would maybe do something about it to separate the two. It never happened. What did happen, like right after that, was I found out later, long after I had gone, JT attacked him at the hospital. And he was upset about just, what was happening when I went there, and the guy was probably just getting on JT's nerves. I'm not really sure the whole situation, but I do know that JT took him as a threat. So the social worker called me and told me that JT was violent, and I disagreed with her. I said, he's not violent. He's not. I said, I told her what the situation was. I know he was concerned because the roommate was being kind of a problem. So anyhow, because of that, this incident in my journal, I was kind of writing about what happened as a result of this. So I'm going to read you a little bit here. So I talked to the social worker. I think this is in 2012, maybe. 2012, I think, or 2013. I mentioned to her I wanted to find out about if JT was going to be able to come home. And she said that she was unaware that that was an option for him. Later, I called him, JT, and we talked. I asked if he'd been talked to about taking injections, and he had said no. Probably pills would be okay, but he didn't like the idea of taking injections. He didn't like that idea. Then he asked me if he'd be able to come home. I said we'd like that, but maybe he'd be happy to be at the Shalom house. He's fiercely independent, and he seemed to have insight into knowing that he may not be able to come home. That made me so sad. I had a hard night about that. I cried, and I had an upset stomach after our conversation. I had mentioned maybe he'd be going to another hospital, but I wasn't sure yet. I told him his friend Cody had visited that day, and I thanked Cody for being his friend. After I explained this to JT, I told JT about it, but after I explained it to Cody, I said that JT had been struggling for a few years. And his illness was like a brain injury. It's really hard to explain to somebody. Sort of like somebody with maybe Alzheimer's or dementia. He was forgetting things. He had a lot of delusions about things. He had a lot of things about what he worried the government was following him. He worried his food was poisoned. He worried about things happening. He just felt like people from the future were coming to hurt people. He had a lot of fears. Anyways, that was a very hard week for me. Because I just knew that after I talked to JT about this, about Cody coming, and all of a sudden JT, he just, he hung up very suddenly. I think he just realized that he found out that he wasn't going to be able to come home. the social worker told me that his thoughts are very frightening to him. I said that I knew that because JT had shared some things with me. I thanked JT for talking to me. I thanked him for being medication compliant, and for staying in the hospital longer because he chose to stay there a little bit longer because he felt a little safer there than he did outside the hospital at that time. So anyways, I want to tell you too, sometimes we'd go visit JT and he told us for a while that he didn't feel very close to our family. He didn't feel close to me or Michael or Terry or anybody in our family. He just didn't feel close to us. I think he felt like we were like strangers maybe, but I think that was because of his own mind. He was like a stranger in his own mind, if you can even imagine that. So that was really hard. That was a hard realization about that. Sometimes we go to visit JT, and there were times when he sort of didn't want me to be there. He didn't want me around, and he wouldn't give me a hug or anything, it was like he was a different person altogether. But one thing that was constant was the love that he had for Michael, because a lot of times he would hug Michael at the hospital visits. He'd give him a hug. And where Michael couldn't lift up his arms to hug JT, JT would like lean in the front of Michael, lean in, facing him. And then he would take Michael's arms and put his arms over him, to give him a hug. And then he said, "I love you, brother," or "I love you, Mike." So that was kind of, that was nice. Another thing was I was kind of like really antsy about JT signing durable power of attorney papers in case he started to have problems with his capacity again, and maybe he would have outlined what he wanted me to do in that event if I was going to be that person that would help facilitate for him to get what he needed for care. I was really uptight about it because I was really scared to death when I couldn't reason with him, or he was out of control, or I didn't know what he was doing. He'd be out all hours of the night. So I figured if I could get him to sign something like that, then I could at least be able to help him and provide a safe avenue for him to get the care that he needed. But he was reluctant about that, and I was really, like I said, I was really kind of uptight about it. And looking back, I think probably that wasn't the best thing to be so uptight, because when you get right down to it, it really didn't matter anyways. You can't control somebody, and all you can do sometimes is just watch what they go through. Like watch them suffer somehow. I don't know how to explain it. You can try to keep them as safe as you can, but undistract them when you can, but it's like anybody who's got a sickness. When people are sick, if they're dying of cancer or whatever they're dying of, or whatever they're trying to live with, you have to sometimes watch people suffer, and it's very uncomfortable. It's a hard thing to do. Another thing I did was at one point we did like emergency guardianship when he was in the hospital at the doctor's advice. And so we had revisited this again after they only do it for like 3 months at a time. And we revisited it again and did it we all agreed, JT agreed to it as well. He was with his lawyer, but he agreed, okay, 3 months more is okay, then you can help me to get to my appointments and all that, that's okay. And then we just gave it up. And then he had started having some issues again, and I wanted to revisit that. I ended up writing to the judge because you have to do everything in correspondence. And I told the judge that, I said, I'm writing at this time to withdraw the petition for guardianship for our adult son. Hearing was scheduled for September. And my reason for withdrawal has to do with the fact that our son has no contact with any of his previous doctors who helped facilitate his care. He no longer sees a psychologist or a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist dropped him as a patient because of too many cancellations, which is another story, but that's what happens sometimes. And transportation was not the issue, again, because I was available to do this. He is non-compliant with any medication, again, since mid-August. He's been hospitalized twice, involuntarily, left for 2 months on a cross-country trip ending in Florida. As parents, we have exhausted all avenues and it appears we are at a dead end. He's currently living with us, but not doing too well, and I expect it's a matter of time before the next hospitalization. I asked him if he could sign a durable power of attorney for us in that event that he become incapacitated, but he resisted. I would have been just happy to have that to advocate for him if he was unable to care for any of his affairs. If in fact he ends up in the hospital, I believe we will not want him to come back home. Hopefully there will be some housing available at some point. The reason I wrote that was because I felt like I couldn't give him what he needed. And I wanted to make sure that he was able to get what he needed wherever that would be. And I also had to care for Michael. So it was just a great amount of work. And I did not want to give up on him, but I knew that it might be a better choice for him to be someplace else at this time. Hopefully there'll be some housing available at some point. We have another son who is nursing home level of care because of his physical disability of MD. I'm confident that we have exhausted all that we can possibly do to help our son John. So please withdraw the petition for guardianship. There are no doctor notes to support the petition because he was unwilling to see any of them when he left the hospital last time. Thank you for your time and guidance. So the judge was a really wonderful judge. And JT had respect for him, and he also respected JT, which is very important to me. So I just think that when you take medication, when JT took his medication, I think a lot of times it was not a natural thing for him. He did not feel like it was natural. He felt like it kind of dulled his senses, and it had a lot of other side effects also. So all I can say is it's a very, very sad journey to have to try to help somebody to navigate this illness. It's extremely hard. It's probably the hardest thing that my husband and I ever went through as far as with our kids. And Mike, he's a lot of work, but JT was a lot more work. And just really sad for everything that he went through. So I just want to share that. And if you remember this, it's all about love, 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 love. Because that's what we have to do to survive. You have to do it. You have to love and you have to listen. And thank you.